So I'm fond of holding up a pen and saying, what is this? It's a pen. But what else is it? It's orange. It's a cylinder. It's plastic, right? Each of these dimensions is valid. I mean, it would be ridiculous to have the question, to have an argument, you know, it's a pen. No, it's orange. No, it's a pen. No, it's orange. Or it's a cylinder. No, it's plastic. No, it's a cylinder. No, but that's exactly the kinds of arguments that most people are having most of the time.
That's right.
Right. And in an ideology, there's two parts of it. One is that you privilege and you say, look, the only thing that matters about this is pen, or the only thing that matters about this is orange or cylinder or plastic. That's the only part that we're going to focus on. And one of Jordan Peterson's critique of the postmodern neo-Marxist ideology is that it's all about power. That's the only thing we're going to look at. We're going to look at this multivariate, multidimensional thing and reduce it down to one dimension. And when we reduce it down to that one dimension, we miss so much of what it is. And like you were saying from an ideological perspective, that when you actually approach something from an ideological perspective, if you focus on just one dimension and you think, if you convince yourself, if you make the mistake that your level of abstraction is the thing, that it is complete or total in some sense, that it is adequate to describe how you should interact with the thing, right? Then you're not going to be open to all of the information and feedback that you get when you try to interact with the thing.
That's right.
And then the feedback mechanisms that would guide you and correct your path as you move forward, if you were open to multiple dimensions, those feedback loops aren't there. And so you just keep driving and driving, and it creates the totalitarian state with the tragedies of 100+ million people killed by their own governments, not in war, like civilians killed by their own governments in the 20th century, over 100 million in the name of this Marxist, postmodernist utopia, because they were privileging one dimension over others, and they weren't taking into account the fundamental issues that come with that. So now, with your turn, anything you have to say about that?
So what I love about Korzybski's point here is that it's in our linguistic system. It's in like the structure of our language that makes that kind of mistake possible. Because we aren't aware of the consciousness of abstracting, that there's different levels of abstractions, we can confuse the whole picture of reality, the truth, for different levels. And that itself is one of the mistakes that he wants to fix in his book Science of Sanity, is to make people aware that there's different levels of abstractions, and that when one is in a higher level of abstraction, that can never encapsulate the whole truth. That can never, like an ideology or a dogma or communism is only going to be a partial slice of it. And I think a lot of people, we forget that, and we become attached to our version of our story being the whole story itself. Yes.
Okay, great. And this brings in what I consider to be the place where Jordan Peterson and Korzybski seem to be in alignment, and where they seem to be radically out of alignment, and where it's so much fun.
Yes.
So one of the ways that they're in alignment is that Korzybski is recognizing that our abstraction of reality, our rational scientific abstraction, is always partial.
Yes.
And always based on the state of the art, which is ever increasing if it's a scientific enterprise.
That's right.
As you were saying in the last sessions, like he always wanted to say, this is the state of science 1938. This is the state of science 1955. So that when we put it in time, we're recognizing that this is an ongoing enterprise, that the thing that we're doing is an abstraction, and that the abstraction is only as good as we've done the integration between the abstractions and connected the levels of abstraction down into the actual experiences.
Yes.
That our rational understanding is always contingent and always partial. Right?
Mm-hmm.
As Ayn Rand would say, knowledge is contextual. At any one time, we can have real knowledge, but that doesn't mean that it's the final knowledge.
Right. It's only knowledge.
It means that that's the knowledge given the context that we're working within and according to the dimensions that we're studying. That there might be additional dimensions that when we discover them cause us to rethink our perspectives, cause us to expand our knowledge, refine our knowledge, and build different abstractions and connect them to the lower abstractions, right, with increasing artistry. And that's the role of science, that we can do that.
That's right.
And that those abstractions are always partial. And that they are built on a series of choices, a series of, okay, we abstracted from this to this, and then from this to this. And once we're up here, these lower level abstractions can be deleted. We can forget about them. To the degree that we forget about them, we're in trouble.
That is correct. You want to be able to name the lower abstractions, at least divulge the previous work you're building upon to build, which creates your higher abstraction. Where are you abstracting from? What base of knowledge are you making your hypothesis from? Your guess.
Great. Again, in Ayn Rand's terminology, she talks about something called a floating abstraction. And a floating abstraction is any abstraction that you have lost the chain of abstractions down to sensory experience, down to perceptual experience. That if you build from perception, right, sensation into perception, perception into concept, and concepts into increasingly complex concepts, that they're all built, that there's a chain or a hierarchy of abstractions, that there are levels of abstraction, and that any abstraction that you can't connect down, she calls a floating abstraction. Right? And the thing about floating abstractions is that if you've made a mistake at any point in the process, it's built into the abstraction, and you can't test it. Right? I'd say this is a Korzybskian concept. That you want to keep the levels of abstraction in mind so that you can test them, so that you can update them.